My dear friends, today's gospel could be misleading for so many of us. Because always there are three approaches, as I believe, to our spiritual life. One is a rigid and positive extremism, where they believe that everything they do or they speak has to be strictly perfect, and they should in no way be painful in the eyes of others or in the eyes of God. That's one extreme. There's another extreme which is just the opposite of it: careless, carefree, never mind attitude. And then there is a middle ground. Some people who think that they are working hard, but there are failures, but never mind, they'll put up with it. Now, I said it could be misleading because very often this passage will lead us to the extreme right, where we have the tendency of thinking that it needs to be perfectly done, it needs to be strict to the letter, strict to the word. Even a slight temptation that comes within is often seen as a great deviation from the precept of the Lord. My dear friends, we must understand what Jesus is here actually telling us is the things that lead you to sin must be removed from your life. First, he teaches about adultery, how adultery is not just a physical action, but it can also be done within your mind. He then goes on to say, what leads you to sin, take it out. If it's your eye, gouge it out. If it's your hand, cut it off. If it's your leg, cut it off. So Jesus is actually speaking about dismembering the things that are leading you to sin. It's not a physical castration or a cutting off, but it is a spiritual alienation from those things that could lead us to sin. In this way, we can in a great way remain steadfast and strong in our spiritual observances. Of course, we need to be strict. We need to be rigid with certain things, but this rigidity and strictness must not alienate us from our fellow beings and from our God and from ourselves. Because ultimately we are human beings. We are relational and we are meant to stay in relation. But then we also need to remember the things that lead us to sin must be taken out. The things that lead us to sin must be protected with God's grace. That's where God comes to work. So there is a balance that lies between our human life and our observance of, Christian principles. Where do we stand? This is a very important question, because very often in the process of interpreting this, we go to the extreme of saying things. We go to the extreme of doing things, which is not helpful. Which is not at all helpful, because we are punishing ourselves for things which we are not actually prepared for, to things which we are actually not responsible. That should not be a way of interpreting things. Therefore, when Jesus speaks about adultery, it should be very clearly said with an intention of committing a sin. But because you are not able to do it externally, you are fostering thoughts in your heart, it is adultery. You had a temptation and you are conscious of it, and then you are immediately coming out of it. I won't call that as a sin. But there you need a purification in that area, for which with strict spiritual practices you can come out of that temptation. God will aid you there. God will assist you there. Everything is not sin. But certain things are sin when it is done with intention, voluntarily, with the scope of enjoying it. Then it is a sin. Be very clear about what you get into. At the same time, finally, don't think that your God is a hard-hearted God. Your God is a kind and a tender and an understanding God. Trust in His mercy more than your capacity. God bless you. Amen.